because repressed tears become acid inside, and they become corrosive. They cause all sorts of trouble on the inside. So knowing that healing includes a lot of crying, it's helpful, because then when the tears come, you welcome them. Hello friends, John Dalton here, Further Emergence podcast, where we go into love, consciousness and the mystery. And in this episode we're going into
the ghosts of other lovers, permission to heal, taking care of ourselves, ugly crying, and being fluent in silence.
Okay, I had a letter from someone. They say, "Hello John, hope you're doing well. I've been having a bit of a tussle with insecurity recently, particularly in regard to relationships. I've recently developed a relationship with someone I find to be spectacular. This relationship has become an involved part of my life as of the last couple of months. She meets everything that I've been looking for in a partner. I'm very happy with the relationship, but there's a lot of unconsciousness that I've been working through because of being in relation with her. Most of it I've been able to work through on my own or through conversations with her. Now, this is rather a lot. I'm not sure how else to describe this, and I find it all a bit childish. But to be frank, the thing that bothers me the most right now is sex. It's uncomfortable to talk about, but has been causing me an aching anxiety from time to time. The thing being us both having previous sexual partners and experiences besides each other. I'm sickened by the idea, but also it is stimulating for some reason, in the same way that self-harm is. I believe a part of me likes the twisted nature of it. It's not world-ending by any means, it's just gross and feels like self-harm. This relationship is the best sexual experience I've ever had, and I believe that it is the same for her. It's blatantly apparent. I recall you mentioning that Barry Long talked about sex often, and I was wondering if you had any insight on how I can go about bringing this darkness into night. I think he might mean light. Essentially, how can I stop thinking about her past partners and fantasizing about it being better than the current present experiences we share together? I'd like to stop having these insecurities and thoughts that interfere with my sexual nature, leading me to this odd form of self-harm. All right. Nice small little question there. There's a lot in that. And it's all super understandable. So, just on the Barry Long front, yes, Barry Long did talk a lot about sex, none of which I found particularly helpful. In fact, I found it a bit destructive, his particular take on it. But he did call himself a tantric master. I certainly am not that, so who am I to say that he wasn't? But I found his perspectives on sex not to be great. And I found, I discovered all that the hard way. So, it's funny, like, because it's to do with sex and sexual partners and previous partners, it sort of feels like it's complicated, and it feels like it's it's really hard and to work through, and it's charged, and it makes you sick to your stomach, and it's like, oh my God, both exist. But really it comes down to the same kind of thing. It's just the kind of way our mind is. And I've said it before, our mind doesn't really care what you think about so long as you're thinking. So if it hits on to something that gets you to think a lot, it gets to feel like it exists a lot. Your mind is a very insecure kind of structure because it disappears every night, and that's disturbing. And it kind of knows that. So when you're awake and when you're using your mind, it likes to feel like it has an existence. So it likes you to think. And if you can find something that you like to think about a lot, or not like to think about it, but you do think about it a lot, that's good. So it will put these ping pong situations in place of, I'm in this new relationship It's so lovely, it's so pure. I don't want to think that this person has been with anybody else. You know that they have, and you know that the fact that they have makes them appreciate you more. They've made the mistakes with other people. We know this, but we also don't want to acknowledge that. We don't even want to think about them being with somebody else because it just seems so disturbing to us. But then also, we have the polar opposite. You have this thing of like, I'm strangely stimulated by it, and I'm kind of going, maybe they were better than me. So there you got a nice little ping pong going, back and forth, back and forth. And it feels like it's an issue. Like, what am I going to do about, these insecurities I have about my partners, this new love in my life, the previous people they've been with? It's a thing that's tormenting me. And it's like, it's not really. It just feels like it is. But really, when you pull it apart, it's just the same old dynamic of back and forth, ping pong, of, have a gut feeling about something. I should do it. Another part goes, no, it's not practical, it's not realistic, you shouldn't do it. And then you go, bang, bang, bang. Your mind doesn't really care. And when you can kind of see that, it just wants you to keep thinking. Then you can kind of just pull back a little bit from it and go, oh, okay, this is just my mind. And it's not like I'm saying you have to get into a fight with your mind or like, naughty mind, you shouldn't be getting me to think like that. That's kind of cruel, because it's just the nature of your mind to do this sort of thing. But if you kind of understand what's happening, you can pull back from it and go, yes, that's true. They did have previous partners. Yes, it's always a possibility that they were better than me. They had a better experience with me. That's always possible. You'd be surprised how quickly that deflates most things. It's like when your mind kind of goes, oh no, I'm going to get a flat tire as I'm driving along. If you're like going, no, I'm not, that's ridiculous, I'm going to think positive. So you got the ping pong going. Whereas if you go, yeah, anything's possible, I could get a flat tire. Or when your mind, catastrophizes something, if you go, yeah, it's possible. Because anything is possible. So because it's to do with sex and love, it feels like it's different. It feels like it's a big dynamic thing. And I have to get to the bottom of it, and I'm tormented. You are tormented, that's true. Just like we're all tormented by the things that our mind can get us to think about. But it's not like your mind is this malicious thing or these terrible descriptions like the monkey mind. I mean, how friendly is that? It's not friendly at all. It's no compassion in that kind of way. And this idea that you can dominate your monkey mind, that doesn't work. Never works. Your mind, and particularly your unconscious, it'll always win. It's way more powerful. It's like 95% of what goes on is all unconscious. So your little conscious 5% kind of going, I am going to dominate. It's ridiculous. Much better to just rely on the mystery and love, which is kind of the same thing. And listen to your mind and go, yep, that's all very true. It's all very possible. And it is strangely kind of stimulating, isn't it, to think about other people being with this person that I love. It gives me this weird, shocking feeling of like, how could I possibly like that? To just let all that just go through and go, yeah, I think that is going on. Yeah, I can feel that. And you don't resist it. It's the resistance and the like, oh, I don't want to be thinking about that. It's really, you're unconscious. And like everybody's unconscious. It's a way of talking to it. And the only way that I found to be able to turn unconsciousness into consciousness is with love. So when you can love those parts of you and kind of go, yeah, I am a bit insecure, and maybe you talk about it with her, and talking is a surprisingly helpful thing to do because it ventilates all this unconscious stuff. So yeah, I would encourage you to talk about it. Talk about it to yourself, talk about it out loud. Don't keep it in the dark. Don't try and repress it. Don't deny it. Just be easy with it. And don't get distracted just because it's to do with love and sex. Because the dynamic, there's enough goes on in love and sex anyway to keep you going. But this, what you described, it just sounds like pretty standard mind stuff of just giving you these little cattle prods of shock to go, oh my God, and you want to get into, no, I mustn't think that, I will think that, I won't think that, and so on. Really, it's not, I don't think it's as complicated as it feels. So, I hope that helps. Now, somebody else wrote to me and said, they were talking about me working with third parties, which I'll get into in a minute, but let me just read you what they said. They say, I do question, this is just an extract, they said lots of other nice things as well, but they say, I do question you're doing distance work for others at the request of friends. It sounds as if you are doing so without the consent or knowledge of the third person. I'm wondering if this is ethical. I was raised to stay out of other people's minds unless asked. So, what they're talking about is, the latest bit of writing I did was a sort of update on what's going on in my one-to-one work. And I talked about a few things. I talked about somebody in Australia asking me to help with their shipping container, which sounds like a strange thing, but they'd bought a shipping container. They were very careful not to buy one that had chemicals in it before, but they didn't actually choose the shipping container themselves. They had somebody else do it for them. And when it arrived and it was delivered, they found that they couldn't spend longer than about 10 minutes inside the shipping container and without feeling nauseous. So they've had it for a couple of years, and they'd originally intended it to be used as a workshop, and they weren't able to do that. So I happened to mention that when I drink water, before I drink it, I put my hands on either side of it, and I turn any of the impurities in the water into helpful things for my system. And I happened to mention this to this person, and they were like, really? Do you think you could do something like that with my shipping container? And I had never tried anything like that before, but because they asked me, I was like, sure, I'll give it a go. And like with the water, I sort of do it on a molecular level. I could sort of help the molecules change into friendly things for my system. And so I tried that with the shipping container, and I found the molecules didn't want to change. So I felt like I had to go deeper. So I went down to the atomic level and changed the atoms, and that seemed to work. So the first session I was able to change about 2/3 from the top down. Before that, like when I tuned into the shipping container, it felt like there'd been a sort of radioactive drum or something right in the middle of the shipping container, and all around it, like there was these kind of waves of radioactivity, and I think that's what the person was picking up on. So yeah, it took 2 weeks, and everything was good. The person can now go into it, and rather than, like whenever I'm transforming stuff like that, you know, if this is, I think of it like a pendulum, and if the one end of the pendulum is dysfunction or disharmony, or in this case radiation, I don't just bring it to the bottom of the arc and make it not be that thing. Like I make it not just stop being harmful. I generally like the pendulum to swing all the way through to the other side of like something really helpful. So I help the atoms become, or the atmosphere in the shipping container to be very conducive to planning, building, flow state, creativity, all that kind of thing. So once it was all done, the person very tentatively started going into the shipping container, and now they can go in and be there for as long as they like. So they're super happy. And then that led to them saying, oh, could you help, this is a couple of weeks later again, could you help my grandchildren? They were injected in 2020 with chemicals that were designed to help them, but I think there might be compounds in what they were injected with that maybe are not helping them, because one of them is actually sick. He's got a lot of digestive problems and he's in hospital. So could you do what you did with the atoms or whatever it was you did with the shipping container, could you do that with the whatever is in those compounds? Again, hadn't occurred to me, so I went, sure, I'll give that a go. And I was able to. And what was nice was, you know, in that pendulum analogy, I was able to get the compounds in the in the little boy's system, which were all around his digestive system, to become inert. And then I was kind of want to try and turn them into something good, but they didn't really budge. And then it occurred to me, well, I've got to ask his system what it wants them to turn into. And as soon as I kind of thought that, then his system said strength and happiness. So I was like, oh, okay. And as soon as he said that, they turned into this lovely strength and happiness. It was quite lovely. And then when I was telling the person, because I never met this child, this is all distance work, I told him about the process, and he was delighted. And then I said this thing about, I had to get from him what he wanted them to turn into, and he said strength and happiness. And then the guy I was talking to became quite emotional, because apparently these are the core traits of this little boy, strength and happiness. So that was nice. Then he asked me to further help with his other 2 grandchildren, and then other people. I mentioned it to other people, and then I've done it for other people who got injected around that 2020 time with the similar kind of things. And yeah, some people are having like ongoing health issues that had been happening since then, and I did this thing, turned the unhelpful compounds into helpful compounds, and their physical stuff went away. So that's all beautiful. So this was all part of this update of like, oh yeah, these are things that have kind of revealed themselves to me in my one-to-one distance work. And one of them was this working with third parties. So I'd be working with somebody, and then they'd say, oh, I've got a friend who's got this problem, could you help them? Like maybe somebody has psychiatric problems and they're not in a position to kind of come and see me directly. Could you help them? I was like, sure. And what I found was that, it went a lot quicker with third party. Usually, like people when I see for one-to-one sessions directly, it's 8 weeks, maybe it's 16 weeks. It can be a long kind of process. But with these third party things, where I'm not dealing directly with the person, it's like somebody asks me to help somebody else, then 3 weeks for long-standing chronic conditions, it's quite remarkable. So that's what this person is saying. It's like, how can you do that? You have to ask them permission, and that's a common thing in distance work or all that kind of thing. And it's true depending on how you work. So when I'm working with people, whether it's directly or third party, I, number one, never go to the person. I'm always very much in the mystery, and I'm available, and the person comes to me. So that's different for a start. Then I never have an agenda. I never kind of go, I want you to get better. I think you should get better, and I am going to make you get better, or I'm going to try very hard to make you get better. I don't do that. I don't have any agenda. All I have is availability and my heart. So, and my skills. Not to sound like Napoleon Dynamite, but I do have skills. Not bow staff skills, but skills. And so I'm not trying to do anything. And it's not like I've got X-ray vision. I only ever see what I'm shown. So everything that I work with to do with people comes from them. There's no part of me moves towards people at all. They come to me in the mystery, and then they show me where the disharmony is in their system, and it's a request that I'm being requested to help with that. So because of that, there's no need for permission, because I'm not doing anything. Like you only need permission if you're going to get in there and do things to the person. Okay? And I've found, and most craniosacral therapists will tell you this, that we never do anything to anybody. That's complete kind of antithesis, that's a hard word to say, to the approach. So because of that, with the third, well, it's exactly the same with the third party. You know, I'm very still in the mystery. I know I've heard of the person, and I'm available, and they come towards me. And then I'm like, okay, I have skills and I'm here to help in any way that I can. What would you like help with? Or would you like any help with? And sometimes a person's system will just stay there for a long time and nothing will happen. And it's almost like they're testing to see if I'm serious about that. And I am. Like I don't want to interfere with anybody's process or life or whatever they're figuring out about themselves in their life. I don't want to interfere with that. So eventually then they'll kind of show me, yeah, I've got this bit here, it's a bit, could you help with that? I go, sure, I'll help with that. And then I help with that. But I never move towards them or have an agenda. So if you are the sort of person who has agendas and move towards people, yes, you do need permission. Of course you do. Because it's invasive and it's disrespectful and it's kind of opinionated and a bit arrogant. But I'm not doing any of that. You know, I'm just happy to sit with the person in the mystery for as long as they want, and if they don't want me to help them at all, that's fine. So yeah, because of that whole question of permission, it doesn't even come up, because it's built into it. It's deep respect for people's process, what they're going through, what they're figuring out about themselves. All I am is available, and I'm just delighted, you know, because all the things I've described and the things that I described in this blog post are pretty out there, you know, and even though I talk about them like this, I'm very practical. Like I'm quite a practical person. So if people weren't getting better, one of the other things I do is I can clear. You know, if people are going on holidays or they're going on a trip or they've got stuff going on in their house or they're going to an Airbnb, I do it for myself. And again, it just came up in conversation. So I can clear the pathway for them, you know. And as I'm doing that, I might go, oh yeah, when you go through this airport, bit of congestion, just keep an eye out for it. And the number of people who've kind of reported to me, wow, yeah, when I got into this, when I was changing flights in this airport, it looked like I was going to be delayed and miss my flight, but then just it all sort of worked out at the last minute, you know. So these kind of confirmations, yes, my cousin is feeling so much better. Yeah, the pathway to when I was traveling, it was clear. The Airbnb was great, you know, it was all lovely. Without that feedback, it's all just like fantasy or aspirational, or wouldn't it be nice if? Which, I mean, I'm up for that as much as the next person, but I mean, I like the idea of it, but in practice though, I have to get the feedback of like, this is actually real, this is actually working for people. And I have. So I do more of it, you know, and I don't know what I can't do. So if somebody asks me to have a go at something, I'll go, sure, I'll give that a go. So yeah, that's a long answer to permission. I don't need it because it doesn't even come up. It's a moot point. Okay, let's have a look at some of the memes on the Further Emergence Instagram feed. This one says, the healer also needs healing, the planner needs surprises, the giver also needs to receive, the thoughtful also need to be thought of, the considerate also needs to be considered. And it's a nice reminder that people who are very capable, very loving, very considerate, thoughtful, kind, it's easy to forget about them. It's easy to kind of go, oh, well, they're bulletproof. They're the one who always rings me. They're the cheerful one. I don't need to ring them, or I don't need to surprise them, or I don't need to be thoughtful for them. But of course they do. probably need it more, because generally people who do those things, they do them because they're sensitive to it. They're sensitive to the needs of others, and they act on it, which is rare and beautiful. And because of that, they can kind of seem like that they're very robust and strong and they don't need it themselves, but they do. They do need it a lot. So I encourage you to have a little look around your life at the people who do all those wonderful things for you, or maybe you're one of them, and maybe you need to ask for it. But if you're not one of them, and you have people who do that sort of thing, is to kind of put yourself in their shoes temporarily and go, oh, okay, what can I do for them? How can I do what they do for me so much? It's a very lovely thing to settle into and kind of go, yeah, the healer needs to be healed and the considered person needs to be considered and so on. And if you're the healer or whatever, then you have to kind of do it for yourself. You have to consider for yourself. You have to surprise yourself. You have to do all those things. Don't wait around for other people to do it, and don't kind of bleed in a corner if no one's doing it either. Don't be a martyr about it. Get down off the cross, we need the wood, as the saying goes. Yeah, do it for yourself. So it applies to other people and to yourself. It's a good little reminder, I think. The next one says, healing includes so much random crying. Let it out. It's just good to be reminded of that, isn't it? Just good to be reminded that healing, it can sound very, oh yeah, healing, it's lovely. But it can be quite ugly, ugly crying, the big snot ball crying, the big sobbing, the big ugly face crying. That is also healing. And different people do it in different ways. Like when I was training craniosacral therapists, it can be a bit easy to get attached to when something is releasing, a big emotional thing is releasing. As a student, you can kind of go, oh, if it isn't a big sob fest, it's not really a good release. And it doesn't necessarily work like that, because you have people come in and yes, they're very cathartic. Maybe they're used to crying. Maybe it's not hard for them to do it. But then you get other people, the cliche being, the big burly builder guy. He's lying on the table and you can feel there's something releasing. And there's nothing going on the surface, He could even be talking to you and it's all, 4x2s and hammers, and you'd never know there was a big release going on inside him. But there might be one little tear coming out of the side of his eye, and that one little tear is just as powerful and packed full of the same kind of emotion as somebody who's quite used to crying. So I think once you kind of know that crying is part of healing, and that if it's there and if it's appropriate, to sort of not hold back, to just let it out and to kind of go, yeah, this is all part of me healing, and it's beautiful, even though it looks a bit, even though it can look like ugly crying. Ugly crying is probably the most beautiful kind of crying, really, in a way, because it's uninhibited. It's like unstoppable. It just comes up from your toes, these big retching sobs. And really that cliche of better out than in, it's so true, because repressed tears become acid inside, and they become corrosive. They cause all sorts of trouble on the inside. So knowing that healing includes a lot of crying, it's helpful, because then when the tears come, you welcome them as for what they are, which is like it's releasing. Something's releasing in a beautiful way. Next one is great. It says, if you are too tired to speak, sit next to me, because I too am fluent in silence. And that's Or Arnold. I don't know who Or Arnold is, but Chapeau, that's beautiful. And it's such a rare gift to give somebody, to be able to just sit with them in silence. Some silence can make some people very awkward, but for the person who needs it, for the person who just, whatever is going on for them, that they have no words, maybe they're on the floor a bit, that you can just hold the space, just hold whatever it is that's going on for them, and to hold the silence and just be silent with them. It's a beautiful gift, highly underrated. We all think we have to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and talk is great, talk's useful, but I don't think people, or we don't appreciate presence and the power of presence, because that's what is conveyed in silence. We're sitting together silently, but there's a deep communication going on, and it's to do with presence. So if on the inside your presence is calm and peaceful and loving and compassionate, then that is what's conveyed to the person. And that's kind of the field that you create and that surrounds them and that holds them. And you don't need to add words on top of that. In fact, words might take away from it. And you can feel the person's shoulders dropping, and they're just relaxing into, I don't have to do anything here. I don't have to make small talk. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to try and explain my own feelings. I don't even know what my feelings are. I'm just feeling them. And I'm just with somebody. I just have a bit of company. I'm not on my own with this. That's a very beautiful gift to give somebody. And to be sensitive to the moment, because these kind of things are not rules to live by. Oh, I must always be silent with people. You know, it's to flow with what's happening, to say words when they're needed, and then to be okay when there's silence, and to kind of know, yeah, there's no words needed here. There's just presence, my presence, their presence, and the presence between us. So yeah, it's a good reminder, isn't it? Just to be, and it's a lovely thing to kind of say to somebody, yeah, I too am fluent in silence. It's a nice atmosphere. All right, well, that's all I have for you this time. I trust you're well. I trust you're of good cheer. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.